Okay, ladies, today what we're going to do is we're going to introduce how to take your scanned or your photographed artwork and upload in Adobe and make edits to it. So what you should have done is you should have a photograph of your drawing, of your little pie piece, and you should have that as a JPEG file. So we want to make sure that your file is a JPEG, and that JPEG should be saved somewhere on your MacBook. If you have all that done, then you can go ahead and follow along here with these steps. And we want to go into Illustrator. We want to go to File, and we want to go to New, and you can title this work your initials and write Mandala Practice. And we can have this one be 17 inches by 17 inches. That's what our actual mandala will be. You hit Create, and I zoomed out a little bit. So what we're going to do to get our scanned image on here, so we're going to go to File, we go to Place. You have to think about where you saved that photograph. I have mine saved in Photos. There it is. And once you find it and you hit Place, see how it is attached to my mouse? And as soon as I click on my artboard, it'll actually release. And it's a really large file size. So that's why it's placed so much larger than my actual artboard. And that's no big deal. To make it fit in the artboard, all I do is I hold down Shift, and that is very important. And go to the selection tool. Hold down Shift, and then I take a corner and I drag it in. And it's a lot of information, so if your image goes away at some point, don't stress out. It's probably just taking a little while for Adobe to process. It's important that you hold down Shift, because if I take this and I don't hold Shift down and I make a mistake like that, that's not going to fit in my circle. And I want you to get used to holding Shift down now, because if you do all that work to make your pie piece correct and then it's all warped, it's not going to look good and it's not going to fit. So Command-Z to undo that. This is my correct proportions. And now I'm going to make this into a vector. Adobe only works with vectors. You have pixels and rasters for photographs, and that's what this one is. We don't want pixels, we want vectors. So to convert it to work in Adobe, it's very simple. We want to make sure the image is selected. So if it's not selected, see how I have my option bar has these options, but now if I select my work, I have all these options. I want to make sure my work is selected with the blue, and I want to go to Image Trace. I want to go to the drop-down menu and hit Black and White Logo. That'll convert this grayed out image with a lot of detail to a very clean line art. There we go. And a couple other things I want to do. We're going to start learning about the direct selection tool and all those great things that it does. But before we do that, we have a nice clean artwork. Now if this is looking good, you'll go ahead to keep going. If you have an issue where you have images or parts of it that don't show up, like you can see like right here in that little cookie, it's really thin but it is still closed. If you have a lot of lines that are closed, just note what happens when you start to work on it. Because when you do your final version of your mandala pie piece, you want all your lines to be closed. So if it looks good, and I'll show you how to delete this part later, but if your image looks good, go ahead and hit Expand. And there you go. Now all of these are actually vectors. So let's do a couple things. I want you to learn how to delete the background. And you can see the background if we go to View, and then if we go to Show Transparency Grid, this will show you everything that's see-through. And what we actually want is we want everything but our shapes to be see-through. So that way we can have background colors, and that way when we do copy-paste, our pie pieces will be right next to each other and not have this all white border. So to get rid of this background, we go to our direct selection tool. That is the white arrow, and the shortcut for that is the letter A. So if I hit the letter A, I have my white arrow. I'm going to click on the box, or on the empty space inside the box, off the empty space, back in the empty space, and then I'm going to hit delete. And there it goes. Now it's all transparent. If I have an area that I need to delete, I can draw a selection over that and hit delete. And I personally do not want to look at the transparency grid. I think it gives me a little bit of a headache. So I'm going to go back to View, and I'm going to do Hide Transparency Grid. There we go. So what we're going to do next is we're going to learn how to color everything in. And to do that, you're going to hit V, so you're back to your selection tool. Draw a selection over everything, so it's all highlighted, and then hit the letter K on your keyboard. And you'll see it kind of changes a little bit. what you can do now is you can fill in colors to all your shapes. So if I come over here and I click on my fill, and let's pick some blues. That looks good to start. I'm going to zoom in so I can really see where I'm clicking, but if I click back here, and it's going to be gray, it fills it in with color. Now remember, if you have that little bug, like mine does, where your color goes away, no big deal. Find your color panel. Mine is over here. If it's not visible, go to Windows, go to Color, go to the menu in the dialog box and go from grayscale to CMYK. And if you click on it, it'll fix your color for you. It's a little lighter. So now all I do is I keep switching colors. You can either go to your color picker here on the upper right. You can go to your fill, whichever one you like. I kind of like the fill so you can see all the different options. Let's get a gray color for the waves. And just keep filling in your work like this. The other thing I want you to practice doing, because you'll need to do it for your final work, is once you have everything filled in, I want you to practice moving some anchor points and moving pieces individually. So let me hit V, so it's a little easier to look at. Now if I want to say move one of these moons, these are supposed to be little moons, so say I want to move just one of them, because like this one's not probably at a good spot. I can't just select it by itself. See how everything's there? Everything will be selected together. So what I can do is a couple things. I can go to Object. I can hit Ungroup. Object again. Now Ungroup is grayed out. So that will help. But I also want to do is hit A and use my white arrow, my direct selection tool. And I can draw a selection just over this. And I can move it. I didn't actually grab all of it, so that's why it's only moving a little bit. So let me do that again. Actually, you know what? I'll show you with the teardrop because that I can get everything for. Oops, it's hard to make sure. I'm trying to make sure I only get the teardrop and not anything else. There we go. So now I can move it around. So if you have something that's misplaced on your pie piece, practice moving it around. And the one other thing I want you to practice is if you have anything that you want to move to line up with stuff, like say down here, if I want all these waves to line up in a circle eventually, then I'll have to move my anchor points. And to move my anchor points, what I have to do is use my direct selection tool. When I click on something, if I zoom in, anchor points are little white boxes. So that's an anchor point. And there's a lot of them. When you have a hand-drawn artwork like this, every time you switch directions, Adobe puts an anchor point down there. So if I want to move something, like if I want to move the tip of this bottom of the wave, what I have to do is select the outside anchor point for the black line. Let's see if I can see it. There's one here. So if I double click it, I can move just the anchor point. If I double click this one, I can move just the anchor point. If I double click that, again, just the anchor point. And that's a little too, and also we have these handles. So if I don't like the bulge there, I can take that handle and I can straighten things out by moving handles. So those are handles and anchor points. And then I don't like how much black is at the bottom now, so I can go back in here and same thing. I can take my anchor points and I can move them. Sometimes you can move them without double clicking, and sometimes Adobe will act a little funny, so just be mindful of which command you're giving it. And again, I can move my handle points. So if you have anything like a wave or mountains or a city that you want to continue working over the whole circle, then you'll want to adjust those anchor points, make sure they line up. I think it's super fun, but some people don't like it. So if you like moving anchor points, I can also show you later on a faster way to do it, but that's a little bit of what you do. So practice some anchor points, practice filling in your artwork with color, and then also take note of what does not translate well, and call me over if you're unsure as to why something didn't show up in Adobe when it's on your paper. And then we'll do this for practice for a little bit, and then we'll actually make our final versions of our pie pieces and upload them, and then make our actual mandalas. Okay, and that is it for this one.